What's going on, everybody? Today on the show, Jonathan's going to be right with us, but we wanted to bring back another guest who was on the original podcast, but a lot has changed, as you can see by her hoodie, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But today's guest, listen, a serial entrepreneur, real estate investor, full time, right? She's the founder of Key Resource, which I'm pretty sure if you check out her Instagram, that is definitely her entire stilo, her entire motivation behind it. And listen, the reality is she's been able to retire from the 9-to-5 life at just 32. Mind you, she actually put her age out there, but it's only to show that you don't have to wait till you're 60 in order for you to retire, which we will talk about retirement in a little bit. But she created the Key Resource in order to inspire, empower, and educate those individuals on the power of home ownership and real estate investing. And she currently owns a couple of properties, ones that we'll talk about in a second, that she's purchased in one state as she's moved to the next state. That's currently grossing over $150,000 a year, which completely funds her entire lifestyle. So, seen in Black Enterprise and Forbes, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to reintroduce you to Kendra Barnes. Kendra, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back on the show.
Absolutely. We're actually going to let John in here now.
Okay.
But we'll dive right into this simply because, and the reason why this episode is pretty interesting is, one, I can say that I am a living testament of what you're doing on your platform. And the reason why is because there are people that have been following you that I've been able to connect with and link with and have been able to make their goal come true of buying their first multifamily. And so I see what you're really doing out here. John, what's up, boss?
Hey, how's it going? Hey, Kendra, how are you?
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
So
you.
we're about to dive right into this, Kendra. I'm pretty sure that you weren't born, or you might have been. Were you born in a family that was used to buying real estate? Tell us about the upbringing and what made you make that decision to go into real estate, and how that looked as far as you going into real estate full time.
Yeah, definitely was not born into wealth. I was not born into a family of like real estate investors. I was born into a very middle class family. My parents were both in the military. And so I moved around a lot. And I was like well rounded in that aspect. And we talked about like saving money. They always encouraged me to go to college, but there was never any talk about investing, never any talk about credit and like making your money make money and like making smart financial moves that will affect you years down the road. So I had a concept of like finances, but it was so basic. I never really considered, I didn't even know that you could be young and Black and be an investor. Like to me, you had to be wealthy first. Like that was something like you had money first and then you could do all these things. I didn't know you could literally build it from the ground up. The aha moment came when my husband and I, we played cash flow for the first time, and then we were like, wait a minute. Like, I don't know if you've ever played that game before.
The Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so like, mind you, this was years ago. And now, like, I hesitate to mention him because he said some
listen,
things.
We all wrote him out. We all wrote him off. Yeah. I had to throw his book out.
Yeah, I'm like, but I can't deny that was part of my story that got me here. Like, playing that game that he created, no matter how I feel about him now, the game gave us an aha moment because if you ever played it, like you cannot win that game without real estate. And the goal of the game is to get your passive income up so that you can basically stop living in the rat race and you can live the life of your dreams. There was no way to win without real estate. So we walked away from that game saying, wait a minute, if that game mimics life and we don't have real estate in real life, we're not winning. Like we can't win. And so we immediately, like the fire was lit up under us to go and start looking for our first rental property.
Was that so? Give me a time frame. Is this college? Is this where is this? Yeah, where are we at with it?
So I went to undergrad, then I went to grad school, and then I got a full-time job in Washington, D.C. as an international economist for the Department of Agriculture, which is so random when you hear it. Huh?
Fun times. It sounds like
interesting,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually hated my job, but honestly, like no one had told me that I could do any, like I was doing it because I could and I was good at it, but I hated it. I didn't like the 9-to-5 world, but it's like, what else was I going to do? Because we're told, go to school, get a degree, get a good government job, and then you work there until you're like 70, and then you live the life of your dreams after that. And I was like, well, I guess I'm stuck here. Like, what am I supposed to do? So yeah, I'm working in DC, met my husband, we bought a house, and for us, we're like, we bought a house. We'll probably live here forever. That's what people do, right? We never considered buying any other property. We're like, we made it.
Right.
Then we played that game, and then we're like, wait a minute, we need more. And so, that was after us, working for the government for a few years. And then we bought our first rental property like 3 months after playing that game.
Interesting. That's so awesome.
So that first home was a single family home?
Our first home was a single family home. Our first rental property was a duplex in DC. And so this is in Washington, DC, both our house and the duplex.
How do you go from, okay, so, and mind you, and Jonathan's my mortgage officer, so that's why we work as a team, and some of our podcast guests, like we wind up all kind of working together, ironically, even from afar. What does financing look like on something like that? Because I know DC is a more expensive market, how did you just save up and just pay for the next property? Did you already have the cash saved? Well, how did financing look for that purchase?
Yeah, so this was in 2014, I think, or 2013 or 2014, right? So DC was still expensive. It wasn't expensive as it is now.
Right,
and we bought this duplex in what people would call the hood or whatever. So our family and friends was like, why would you buy there? Like, this is crazy. But we're like, it ain't gonna be hood for long, right? And so the duplex was $228,000. And the down payment on that was like $57,000, because if you're buying a rental property, you got to at least put 20% down in most cases. There are some lenders who will take 15. That's rare. So 20%, that's a lot of money, or 25% in some cases too. We didn't have $57,000 because we hadn't been saving for this. We had been traveling, like we were living well. Like we had a nice house. We were traveling 3 times a year. We were like just doing, whatever with our money, but we were never making it make money. So in order to afford the down payment, we ended up borrowing from our retirement fund, our government retirement, basically, which I always pause and say, it is an option for people, but make sure you consult with a financial advisor because it may not work for you. For us, we looked at it and said, okay, how much money is our money making in this retirement account? And how much could it make in this rental property? And it made sense for us to do. And that's how we ended up getting the money for the down payment, because we didn't have it otherwise.
You mentioned one thing. You said not going to be hood for long. What made you know that and ignore the naysayers around you?
Well, yeah, that's so big too. So first, we looked and saw what the city was doing, like what the plans were for that area. And just a quick glance at like the city planning development website, you could see what was coming down the pipeline. And that's the thing about gentrification. People think it's this overnight thing. And it's like people are all up in arms. And I'm like, do you know how long they've been planning that? They've been plotting for literally over a decade at least. And so what we're seeing happen overnight has been in the plans for years. So that was one thing. And then the other thing, as far as the naysayers, and I find that for like first generation real estate investors, it's usually the people closest to you who will not see the vision because they're projecting those fears on you. And what I found is, especially from my parents, and now that I'm a parent, I understand it more, even though I hope I never do this. I think my parents were trying to protect me because they're scared. They've never done it. And they're coming from this place of trying to protect you, but it's really like limiting you. It's like these limiting beliefs. And so we're just like, we're still going to do it and let our success be the proof. And, now everyone is like, oh man, like, and they're interested now. So yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, I to your point, my parents were great at saving and maxing out their 401ks, and the house is paid off, so they own their house. They were great defensively, like not going crazy on spending. It's just the fact that they never went on the offensive, and that was like the one thing that like just kept them, from possibly going from middle class to like upper middle class, or like, into more of a wealthy class, was just the fact that they just never did anything on the offensive end
Yeah.
over the years. And I just look at like they built an amazing nest egg, an amazing financial, and it took the years to do that. And I'm just wondering, like, just as they played a little bit of offense, like in the meantime,
Mm-hmm.
I know that would have helped. And then the other thing that you mentioned, which I think is so key, and I'm glad that John asked the question, because it's almost like it's a question, but most people would expect it to be answered one way, right? So, for example, how did you know that the hood was going to be, like gentrified? How did you know it was going to change, right? And it's safe to say that like every hood is going to be gentrified, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, I think it's also innate for investors to like want to go after that, even though that might not be the best option for them. And they go
Mm-hmm.
after the cheapest property just because they're cheap, not because there's any like economic stability behind it. So I
Right.
usually like, for my threshold, it's like I don't go after D neighborhoods, but I will go after C. Like I want to see something that I can go off of.
Mm-hmm.
I just have not yet developed that skill where, for example, like other people not from our community and individuals that don't look like us, they have no problem
Yeah.
buying up strictly like the complete war zones. But I also think it depends on your style. It depends on your deal criteria. So yeah,
Yeah.
so at least
I
with that
know.
point.
And that's the thing too. Like, and I hate that people from outside of the community can see the vision and then we can't, or like, they're just
Mhm.
not scared because they're willing to just like be pioneers and wait. Also the war zone thing, like I really struggle with that term because I also feel like that is so misleading. Like war zone, really, it's literally Black people existing.
I,
Like that's all it is, just
mm,
surviving. And why is that gotta be a war zone?
mhm.
And that was also created by like the others outside the community too. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I
Yeah.
struggle with that term.
No, no,
There's
no,
all
no. That's a
perspectives.
totally, and mind you, I say that from a social responsibility of knowing that majority of say together the hoods, right, are in our particular demographic, right, us being displaced and pushed into these areas, right. But I'm even talking about like the Midwest, like for example like Cleveland, where you'll catch a whole entire like white suburb that's completely like a war zone. Like it just looks like trash, like it looks like trash, where there's a lot of the abandoned buildings. Like I do not want to have the only nice property like on that block. Like I want to see some type of
Okay.
like economic backing behind it.
Right, right.
But to your point, like I do say, and I do say words, and I'm just talking about the area, but I realize that from the social economical standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
that those considered areas may have more of our particular demographic than other demographics. But
Mm-hmm.
that's real though.
Yeah. Yes.
That's real. And I'm glad you shed light on it because it is something, right? And uh, to your point of like, why do individuals in the community not see that happening beforehand? And I just think it like for the most part, like it's one, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe consciously what the subconscious won't accept. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we all know how to eat better. We know how to like do things with our money to make it grow. We know how to do all the things, but our actions are going to take over at the end of the day, which actions are all subconscious, never conscious. Right. So in those particular situations, like we're just not used to it. Like we haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, both of us. John, you could speak on it. Our parents weren't owning real estate except for the home that they lived in, like
Mm-hmm.
not using that as an investment too. So that's all that I thought. And then obviously not getting into the business, and you're like, wait a minute, like. And then you see like all this money moving back and forth and wealth being transferred at signing of a paper and
Yeah.
like it's crazy. But we weren't accustomed to seeing that. So it's so different. We don't know.
Yeah,
Exactly.
just to add on that a little bit, the people within the community don't they I believe like they can see it, but they surround themselves with people that aren't trying to grow, so they just focus on what's right in front of them instead of thinking long term. A lot of people think about instant gratification, if they have one little hiccup in a real estate transaction, they'll get discouraged. Life is all about battles. You keep battling yourself, keep falling, keep picking up every day. And life as an entrepreneur is a battle. We all know this. It's a roller coaster. We all have emotions. We all go through these roller coasters emotionally throughout our day, throughout our week. And we just gotta learn how to just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what it is.
Part. So let's talk about that, because you're helping landlords do exactly this. So any type of limiting beliefs, anything that people are coming to you with, you're able to unpack that and get them onto the road to success. Let's talk about Kendra's criteria. What's Kendra's criteria to know if she's looking at a good deal? And then we'll talk about everything that you're doing on at the key resources with helping other landlords.
Yeah. So for me, there's it always depends, right? I would never say I'm only looking at single families, or I'm only looking at multifamilies, or I'm only looking in this area, whatever. For me, I'm looking at my ability to pivot. And what I mean by that is say I'm looking at a property and I'm like, oh, this is a great property for Airbnb, right? That might be all cool. I'll run the numbers with Airbnb. When you're doing short-term rentals, you can make way more than when you're renting to a long-term tenant. So that's great if the numbers work for a certain scenario, but will the numbers work for other scenarios too? Because if Airbnb doesn't work out or whatever doesn't work out, are the numbers going to work for Section 8? Are the numbers going to work for traveling nurses or students or, and so for me, if I'm looking at a property and I cannot easily pivot and be profitable, I'm not going after it. It needs to, the numbers need to work for at least 3 scenarios. And the numbers aren't going to be the same. Like if I rent out to a long-term tenant, a regular cash paying tenant, it's not going to be the same as renting out to Section 8, not going to be the same as Airbnb, but am I still going to be profitable and is it still going to meet my goals? That's one of the top things I look for.
Are you doing flips?
Oh.
Go ahead,
you said, do I do flips? No. I've
are you doing it? Or maybe. Yeah, that's my wave. I don't necessarily care for flips. Go ahead, Jonathan. You was about to say something.
The Airbnb. Touch base more on the Airbnb. I that's something I kind of want to shift to. I've been thinking about it. I'm closing on a property soon, so I might shift the entire building to Airbnb. But talk to us a little bit more about Airbnb.
Yeah, I love Airbnb. I love short-term rentals in general, whether it's Airbnb or whether it's travel nurse rentals, like I mentioned, where they're renting for 3 months at a time. Also location rentals where you're renting it out by the hour for photo shoots and stuff like that. So short-term rentals are great. Just the expenses can get high because of the constant turnover. So you got to factor in cleaning expenses.
I was going to say, is the overhead
Well, the profits are crazy though. So if you can set it up right, I mean, and with Airbnb, the guest is paying for the cleaning fee. So if there is a cleaning expense, I mean, your guest is going to cover that, right? But you still got to buy you got to furnish it. You got to provide, I don't know, water or snacks if that's what or coffee. You don't have to, but anyway. So for Airbnb, definitely think about just the turnover and managing that. But you're gonna make probably 2 or 3 times what you would make with a long-term tenant. So I think it's a great opportunity.
How are you searching for your locations? That was about to be my question. Do you have a specific niche area? Because when I think of Airbnb, and I was part of a group chat earlier today with some of my bros where we're talking about getting into that type of style. And automatically I'm thinking okay, Florida, South Carolina, anywhere that's a destination for tourists, anywhere that's on the coast. But it seems is that your criteria? Or okay. Well, I know you mentioned traveling nurses as well, so that makes sense if you're next to hospitals and things like that. How are you locating
if you think about it, I'm in San Antonio, Texas right now. So we started out in DC. We recently moved to San Antonio, a year and a half ago, moved to San Antonio, Texas. And this is not, I wouldn't say a travel destination. I mean, maybe, but what is here are there are 4 military bases. And one of the military bases here, they have graduations every week where these new military, recruits are graduating and going on to the next level. People are traveling here I think they've changed it because of COVID. People are traveling here on a regular basis for these graduations. There are several universities here. People travel for that. And so it doesn't have to be some major travel destination. And think about this. The duplex that we bought in DC, that first rental property we purchased, we put one unit on Airbnb. And even my husband was like, anybody gonna want to rent an Airbnb in the hood? And when I tell you we were booked, like we barely ever had an empty day because of how it looked, how we furnished it, the amenities we offered, the price was right. And people just didn't care. Like, it was a beautiful place. No one bothered them. It was a great price and we stayed booked. So yeah.
So now I got to do, wait till this moratorium is ended. No, I'm playing.
No,
I'm getting everybody out. We're going to do Airbnb. No, I'm playing.
But to your point though, like it's really good to diversify. So if you're buying a building, I wouldn't even put all of them on Airbnb. I would do something different. And maybe, I don't know how many units it is, but 2 units on Airbnb, maybe 1 unit Section 8 one. Because that Section 8 money, you're going to get no matter what, right?
I love Section 8. Yeah, I love Section 8.
I would diversify. If you have more than 1 rental unit, like I would always diversify. I wouldn't do all Airbnb.
4 units, so I could play around with it.
Yeah, and look into like renting like a location rental, like on PeerSpace, PEER space, where you can rent out by the hour for like photo shoots. If you think about people like bloggers or like you guys, you have a podcast. If you needed a quiet space or a nice like background to shoot some video content or whatever, people are renting that space by the hour for events, meetings, and the profit on that is even crazier than Airbnb. But again, think about like the constant turnover. But there's just so many ways to get. That's why I love real estate. There's so many ways to make money. And especially once you furnish that rental, once you decided, okay, I'm going to do a furnished short-term rental, now you can list it for travel nurses. When the travel nurses aren't booking, you can put it out there on Airbnb. If you don't have any on Airbnb, you can put it out there on PeerSpace, and you can just kind of get it from different avenues at the same time. It's already furnished, so you're just switching up your platform.
Interesting.
What's the percentage makeup of your properties? Like, is it majority of your, tenants are the regular renting tenants, and then the next 25% is Airbnb, the other 25% is traveling nurses? What's that mock-up look like?
Right now, we only have travel nurses and like regular, paying tenants. But before, because we just sold 2 buildings in DC, and we had Section 8 in one, and then we had Airbnb and then regular tenants. And then we just got rid of Airbnb and did regular tenants. So we've done a little bit of everything, but right now it's just the travel nurses and the regular tenants.
Why did you sell, if you didn't mind me asking?
Yeah, no worries. So we decided, well, shoot, it's a seller's market. So
and so that's why I asked. Like, a lot of people are moving funds around, a lot of people are reinvesting, cashing out. I didn't know if there was a specific, was it the landlord tenant headaches, or was it more just moving cash around?
Well, the first property we sold, our 4 unit, and the price was just, it was right. And we were like, okay, it was the oldest building we own. And with the older properties, you're going to have old property problems. Yeah. And so we're just like, with us being so far, what really did it for us was the pandemic. When we moved to Texas, that was like a couple months before the pandemic. So in our minds, we can travel back and forth freely. My husband, he's very handy. So when something, happens, he'll get on a plane, or, we felt like we could easily get back and see the properties if need be. But once we weren't comfortable traveling because we have a small baby. I know some people are out there flying around. We're not, because we have a small baby and we're trying to keep her safe. And so when he couldn't get back as easily as he wanted to, we're like, man, let's just sell it and we'll just start buying here. So that was that. And then we sold the duplex as well, that first property we bought. And again, it was just like an offer we couldn't refuse. And we're just like, okay, we'll start buying out here, like, and build our portfolio here. So. Yeah. Did
you not want to do a property manager? Because I'll play devil's advocate where it's like, okay, property manager, and then you just tap into the equity either via cash out or via HELOC, and then you still have that property, and then you're just cutting checks, for another property.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the property manager thing, it's like no one's gonna take care of your property like you take care of your property. Yeah. And we just hadn't. We just like,
they're still gonna call you to fix things anyway. Yeah, I got you.
And my husband's always like, he just want to see it for himself. And so for the properties, that we kept, they're just really easy. Like we don't ever hear from the tenants and stuff like that. So yeah, that's why we decided to to go ahead and sell and then just start building up here. So now we're trying to get into like shipping container homes, which is something fun I'm excited about. We've also started investing in real estate investment trusts, which the returns on that are pretty good for not having to do anything. So just trying new things this year and like diversifying in different ways.
That's diversification on a whole nother level. Shipping container homes?
Yeah.
Is that a Texas thing? That's a Texas thing?
No, that's all over.
Really? Shipping container?
So they take the shipping container.
They make the houses look nice.
Yes. And especially
they have a whole episode for it. They have a show for it.
Especially with like lumber being how expensive it is now, and people trying to do all these new builds, and now the prices are crazy.
I did see
like,
that.
This is gonna be the new wave. You heard it here first.
I've seen everything else. I've seen the boat homes. I've seen the really, really, really small
tiny homes. Yeah.
Those, and then like the outdoors, they're just like a couple of pieces of wood like slapped together, and like they made those like really, 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 really nice, and they make them really dope. So I can't even lie. But I haven't seen the shipping container. Wait, so like, okay, so run me through this. Like, what do you go online and you just buy a shipping container, and then like they drop that off and you start renovating the thing? Like, how does this work?
Well,
like who dropped off the shipping container?
We could renovate it ourselves, but there are companies who basically renovate them for you, and you buy them and they ship them to where you are. Or like there are companies here in San Antonio that do it. So we've gone and looked at some. Like I found some for sale on like Facebook Marketplace. Yeah, they look really nice.
How much do these things cost?
So actually, they range around like 50 to 70K here, but I found one for like 38K. I just got to find some land. So right now I'm looking for land to put this shipping container on that I found for 38K. My plan is to rent it out on Airbnb and on Pure Space as a location rental, but I'll rent it on Airbnb, on the off days. So that's my plan. 38K. It's like a 1-bedroom.
And obviously this is modular homes. Are those considered modular homes? Because when they build it and ship it to you, I think that's what it's called, right?
Modular, yeah, and it would be like it's almost like adding an ADU.
Gotcha.
You could add it in your backyard as an ADU, but I'm trying to just buy land to put it on. Yeah.
That is the one thing I feel like New Jersey does not have, or like any type of like rules surrounding it as far as like ADUs. And what's the acronym for? Is it additional development unit or something? Like what is it? What's the acronym?
Oh my gosh, I can't remember what the A is, but dwelling unit. I can't remember.
So we'll just call it additional dwelling unit. But we never. And it's crazy because it doesn't. Or I guess one of the biggest things is that it doesn't crazily affect like either your taxes or the assessed value like as much, because the thing here in New Jersey, like we'll have 2 families that have a bonus apartment, but the moment that you convert it into a 3, like your taxes have now jumped. Where it looks like with these ADUs, you're able to do, and they were big out in LA, like when we stayed out there in an Airbnb, and you can do them in the garage, you can do them in the basement, you can do it in the outhouse, in the back house, and so they renovated and changed their whole entire garage, put plumbing intact and all that other stuff, and just considered it an ADU, and it didn't like affect their taxes pretty much like as much. I don't think New Jersey like hit us any much or anything like that per se. I don't think so. Yeah. Jonathan, you haven't heard anything of that, do you? I haven't heard anything either. Okay, so last question regarding these shipping container homes. This is mind blowing. So, purchasing these things, right? We're not able to take a mortgage out on these things, right? Like we have to either purchase them cash or take a loan out and do it that way.
Yeah, I think especially at the price point, like if it's less than 50K, not many lenders would give you a mortgage anyway. But actually, I don't even know, because I hadn't planned on getting a mortgage, so I have no idea. I was going to purchase it cash, but I guess if you're a lender.
Typically I don't lend under 100K. So depending on the area, so certain areas, if it meets that criteria, the local banks have to lend it. But what you can do, Austin, just get a couple credit cards, no interest for a year, buy it up.
I would want a mortgage on it. I don't even know how I would get. Well, technically, the mortgage is only the loan that's being tied to a property. So technically, you should be able to get a mortgage. I mean, obviously not a $38,000 one, but if there was like a 2-story shipping container home,
Yeah,
and now
there
like
are.
you got, now it's like $125,000 and it's fully renovated. You should be able to take a mortgage out, right? Like in theory, a mortgage is
Yeah,
just a
I'm sure
loan
there's
that's
like
just backed by the
non-traditional,
property.
non-QM loans that probably will
Something.
lend on it. Yeah, definitely. I'm sure you
That's
find
so
something.
interesting.
The rates aren't
Shipping
as
container
sexy as
homes.
what you think they are, probably.
I could imagine. Like, I don't even know how you assess the risk off of that, to be honest with you. But okay, shipping container homes. Now I know the title for this episode. So let's talk about the key resource and just what made you want to start that. As we kind of go into our descent here, but what made you want to start that? How did that come about? I guess that is the second child, if I'm correct, or that might have been that's the second child that came first. I'm assuming.
Wait,
So
you talking about
talk about that.
no, so yeah,
Key resource.
I only have one actual child. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and key resource is the second, right? Is that the baby? Is that the other baby? Is that the other
yeah. So the
child? Key
key
resource?
resource, the business is my baby. Yes. So I have a 1 year old who's my actual baby. Well, actually, she's my boss.
Oh
But I
man,
started.
congratulations! I know the feeling. I have a 2-year-old girl, and she runs my
Oh,
life.
see,
And
well,
John just
actually,
had
my
gave
daughter.
birth to a little one.
You said,
Yeah, so I have
Congratulations,
another one,
Jonathan.
a week-old.
what you said a week ago.
Yeah, she gave birth about almost 2 weeks now. So the
So
baby's
you have a
2 weeks.
2 year old and a 2 week old.
Yep.
Well, are you even sleeping?
I have a
You
5-year-old
see he's
too.
doing the interview from his car.
What?
Yeah. So
That
my
is,
life is busy. Yeah. You see, I'm in the car, so I have to keep it moving and still work.
oh my goodness. Okay, well, wow, that is admirable. So yeah, we just have one, and it has definitely been interesting in this pandemic. But yeah, so um I started the key resource because I really know that like representation is important. And so just like we were saying, we hadn't really grown up seeing this in our families. You don't really see it, with your friends and stuff like that. So I realized that once I started talking to my friends about what my husband and I were doing, they were just like, how are y'all getting the money to do this? And one person said to me, like, did y'all rob a bank or something? And I'm like, now y'all know goodness well, I would never survive in jail. I like literally, I would die. I would just crumble up and wither away on the first minutes of being in. Like, no, I didn't rob a bank. And I realized, like, dang, there's a really big gap in information. And even if I could just inspire someone that, oh my gosh, she looks like me, she doesn't come from, some wealthy family, that means I can do it too. That's the main motivating factor, in me starting the key resource. But then just letting people learn from my mistakes, because I've made mistakes. Like, so why should anyone come across my platform and then make the same mistakes I did? That's crazy. So that's basically what I do this for. And it's been really exciting to see people's transformation. And like, I feel like online, just because podcasts like yours, there's people on social media showing what they're doing. We are literally seeing, like you said earlier, this huge wealth transfer, like, right? There was so much going on we didn't know about. Now it's being shown and the people look like us. And it is so powerful. It's like really fun to see.
You mentioned mistakes.
Go ahead.
You mentioned mistakes. What do you think is your biggest mistake?
One of the biggest mistakes is like not knowing what house hacking was. When we bought that duplex, we didn't even know that was an option. And if anyone's listening and doesn't know, which if you listen to, I'm sure you guys have talked about it, but house hacking is buying a multi-unit property, living in one unit and renting out the other units. And we didn't know that was an option. So instead of putting $57,000 down, if we would have just lived in the property for a year, we would have only had to put down like $8,000 or so, which that's a lot of money to save. But even if I had known about it, I probably wouldn't have done it because I wasn't in that wealth building mindset yet. So I wasn't even willing to sacrifice really then. So we didn't end up house hacking until the next property purchase. So I say that's one of my biggest mistakes is not knowing about house hacking. And then even if I had known about it at that point, I probably wouldn't even taken advantage of it just because of where my mindset was. Like, if you're building from the ground up, you got to sacrifice. Like, you got to make some short-term sacrifices. So yeah, that's it.
What's so now that you've made the move, so now the family's starting to build in San Antonio, and it looks like you're
Mhm.
going after like a couple of different properties, or at least the different types of properties.
Mhm.
With that key resource, what's the bring us 5 years into the future and all the goals are being hit. What does life look like? What does the business look like? What is that?
Man, that's such a good question because if you would have asked, I guess the last time we talked. So I guess the last time we talked, I
It's
hadn't
about
had.
3 years ago, 2 years ago. It
Wow.
was about 3 years. It's about 3 years
Baby,
ago.
that was pre-baby.
So let me tell you what I thought my life was going to look like now. So my husband and I both like retired from our government jobs, and I know you said we would mention what that even means. So
Oh
basically, we
yeah,
left our government jobs and created our own retirement, right? Which means that we no longer have to exchange time for money, but we still do things that make money. But now it's things that we want to do. So that's our rental properties, my online business. My husband, he does a lot of day trading. He loves that, and so. But it's like it's more freedom to with it, right? So we both retired from our government jobs, and our plan was to immediately become nomads and like just travel the world and just do whatever, like just country hop. And as soon as we decided to do that, we ended up pregnant.
uh,
So it was
okay.
like, you know,
We got
you're
another
not going
blessing on the
anywhere.
way.
Yeah. So it's like, God had other plans. And so we settled down and decided to move to Texas to be closer to family. Since we have a baby, we're like, we need free babysitters. And we could have never foreseen that right after moving to Texas, there'd be a pandemic. And now, just raising a baby in a pandemic has beat me down on many a day. Like it's
And
hard.
I can
It's really,
imagine.
it's really hard. So, just trying to adjust and like pour into our daughter as much as we can and things like that. That's our plan.
Love
Would
it.
you say now that you have the baby, has your mission, like you feel like you want to accelerate more on the mission and on the goals because of your child?
Yeah, it's actually changed a lot of like before we were just doing this for ourselves to free ourselves, right? And now it's like, oh my gosh, we need to set things up so that she is like a trust fund baby. So she can be like
Yep.
financially free, right? And so we just signed all of our like estate planning documents and setting up, our will and trust and medical directives and guardianship and stuff. Because it's like if you're building wealth, but you don't have those things set up, what are you doing it for? Like you are literally giving the state control of all your assets. And even though it's not fun to talk about, I feel really good that we did it because now it's just like, we're building this and we're making sure that it's set up in a way that she can take advantage.
I think DMX is actually isn't DMX's state going through that right now?
I don't know. I haven't been keeping up with it.
I think I'm gonna look at it really quickly even while we're on this. But I think and especially that's what just Swiss Beats was like one of the biggest things was like having those things like in place because you family and all that other stuff it completely changes with I can't see it but yeah, okay. But okay, so I see a couple of things that like some things popped up regarding like estate planning and that as much, wealth, which mind you, like he didn't obviously die at the height of his career and things like that.
Right.
But there's still wealth there and there's still royalties and things that can generate income from things that he did 15, 10, 20 years ago, right?
Exactly.
But it looks like there are some complexities with how it's ran because there weren't proper estate planning, protection, contingencies like in place. And I think it's, of course, it's not talked about because it's not sexy, but it's wealth, like there's wealth planning, there's wealth making, and then there's wealth preservation. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
these are all things, they're all, on the same side of the same coin. And you're right, it's not talked about enough, which is why like we could easily change our like entire like demographics financial outlook if we
Yeah.
just spent $25 a month on life insurance when we were 22 and 23. So now mine is 39, like $39 a month. And like, God forbid, if it ever would have happened that I would have died, that like everybody else is taken care of, or like stuff is getting paid off, if assets can get paid off, if debts can get cleared, everything, you know. And it's shocking, but I also realize the reason why is because it's also easy not to do. And the $39 a month or the $25 a month is also easy not to do, or I can handle that later. And it's crazy. But
it's just an uncomfortable conversation that people like to avoid. It needs to be done now. You can't wait for things like that.
Like, I need to have a conversation. Like, I don't know with my family, you know what I mean? Like, I need to have a conversation with my family, but then it's just like, well, y'all ain't dying. Like, y'all gonna be here forever. So it's just like, you know, parents don't die, right? So, and, you know, and I say that with the utmost respect for anybody that's ever lost a family member. I'm blessed to have both of them. But yeah, to your point, it's such an awkward conversation because it's I don't want to talk about that. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather talk about like us going to the Knicks game or like whatever it is.
Exactly.
No, I 100% agree.
Yeah, I ain't even knocking it. Okay, so as we started to sit here, we're gonna go into the core four here, which are the four questions that we ask each and every guest here on the podcast. I'll start it off. John will hit the next one. But question number one, which we're pretty sure you might have touched about already, but just so we can isolate it, what is your favorite aspect about real estate?
Oh, yes. It's the fact that you don't have to be wealthy first. And the fact that you can make money in real estate so many different ways. Like, I love that it's versatile.
Beautiful.
Wait, so I don't have to have 200K in the bank in order to invest in real estate? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
They lied. They lied to us.
They lied. They did.
They lied to us
Rich
all.
get richer.
Which is why I never understood, like, even that article that went out that when the pandemic first happened, and they were like, yeah, JP Morgan Chase and such, they're going at 25% down, and they're eliminating like all their like first time home buyer loans, and you can only go after it with 25% down. Was nuts. And like everybody's losing their mind because like it was so crazy. That and there's a meme that I had a big problem with, but I have to remember it. It'll come back to me. But I had a big problem.
JP is not in the mortgage business. That's not where they make all their money. So they're gonna get safer bets. Whatever's safer for them, they're gonna go with that first. Question number 2. What is your favorite business or personal development book? And you cannot use the last book from the last show, or you cannot use the author you mentioned earlier today.
He who must not be named. Let me get everybody knows what time it is for me. Let me get out my Amazon cart.
No, so I have a really good one. It's called The Big Leap. The Big Leap. And like when I first saw it, I'm like, man, this is gonna be one of them little self-help books. No, this book is the most transformational book that I have personally ever read, and it's just so good. Like, and it really relates to like wealth. It's not meant for wealth building in real estate. It's something you can apply to all aspects of your life. But when I tell you that book is so good, like The Big Leap, add it to your list.
Already done.
On the cart.
Yeah, I was about to say, not even the list, because the list gets pushed out. You're going to have to add it to the cart.
I do that too.
Point, click here in 2 days. We're screwed as a society. Everything's going to just speed up from here.
Yeah.
Convenience. We pay for convenience. So
we pay for convenience, especially millennials.
Company, technology is easier convenience. We're going to go with that company.
Yep.
110%. All right. Question number 3. When you're not out helping a bunch of people become new landlords, which, by the way, like I said, and I'll say it again, I'm a total testament simply because there are students that come in from your class that we are linking with, and we are getting into homes and further expanding the knowledge. And it's awesome when they hear me talk about it. And I think the biggest compliment, honestly, is when they felt that there wasn't so much of a disruption from learning from you and then working with me.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, because there's a lot of synergistic things that we believe in, just how we either manage or run or purchase our properties,
Nice.
what we look for. So the the next step in the process is a smooth transition for them. At least from what I said. I don't know if they, we'll see what happens, but I'll take that over not saying it. So we'll take it. But
Yeah.
when you're not doing that, what are some of the things that you like to do in your spare time?
Spare time? What
All
is
right, all
that?
right, all right. So,
Man, I be chasing my 1-year-old around all day. Like, to be honest, if I'm not on the internet doing a webinar, if I'm not on social media, I am literally just momming it up. That's it.
rightfully
And
so.
momming it up is the best time, isn't it?
It is. It is the hardest thing I've ever done, like, and the most rewarding thing at the same time. But no, I mean, other than that, I do love traveling. I love cooking. Like, I love, thrift shopping and stuff like that. But these days, man, my little boss, she is something else. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, shout out to her, and luckily,
God bless.
she and hubby are pretty much on the podcast vicariously through you anyway. So the whole
Yeah,
family is out here teaching,
you might hear them in the background. If so, my bad.
and
Okay,
luckily,
that's why I'm in the car.
that's as you had to drop off the little one. So I completely understand. And go ahead, you got it, John.
Question number 4. Where can people find you?
So you guys can find me on Instagram at The Key Resource. So if you heard me here, definitely shoot me a DM. But you can also find me online at thekeyresource.com, where I have, a blog and different resources and stuff there. So if you did hear me on this podcast, I would love to hear from you guys. I had a lot of fun chatting with y'all again. So, or
Yeah.
meeting you for the first time, John, but chatting with you guys, it was nice. It was fun.
Awesome. Was there anything that we didn't ask that we should have asked?
Man, there's so much to talk about.
I know.
Like again.
Without going over another 20 minutes. All right. You know what? Here's what we'll go out with. Give us one. And the reason why we love going over these landlord horror stories, we're going to ask you to share one, is because one, we don't want to sugarcoat shit, right? Like, we want people to know, like, yo, this is now your responsibility. But we also want people to see, like, oh, like, I can go off of, like, I can go into this madness and still be extremely successful. So if you got one, it doesn't have to be a horror story, because I'm not wishing for just horror stories, but one story that, challenged you about landlording.
Yeah, one tenant we accepted, we interviewed her and everything. She was great. She was a Section 8 tenant. And what we learned from that was we never interviewed her husband. So it was like her and her husband and her 2 kids. And her husband ended up being the downfall of her. So we had to put them out. And if we had met her husband, if we had like actually interviewed him too, we would have never let them stay there. She was trying to like take the steady path and like get her life together, but he really was dragging her down. And from then on, we're like, anyone that's going to be on the lease, we need to meet all of them. And we just let it slide that time. And it was just, it was bad. So from then on, it's like, you need to meet every single person. They need to bring their kids with them. Like, everybody, I need to meet everybody. That's just me.
Interesting.
Yeah, don't you hate that when you go, like, don't follow your own rules and you just try to be the nice person? It always bites you in the ass.
Yeah.
This is the only reason why I was thinking about even like bringing on some type of property manager, or like an a la carte property manager, where it's just like, here are our responsibilities. I just need you to handle this, this, and this.
Right.
Because I'm gonna keep it G. Like, sometimes my emotions get in the way, and it's just like, oh, it's okay. And then like it's you wanna, they say tenants respect landlords that are firm but fair. And at the same time, though, like, my emotion comes in, like, especially with people, like, I want y'all to be happy. Like, I want your living situation to be good. My wife is a lot more tougher than me on that aspect. So she's like, I don't give a shit. Like, if they, like, it is what it is. Like, we gotta get them out. They're out of here. And it's rightfully so, right? Because like
it's a business.
And it's a business, and like, my heart gets into it a little bit too much. So that was the only other reason why. But to your point, there was one time like there was two ladies. There was a mom and her daughter. And which there's signs, right? Now, mind you, this is. With the utmost respect, I realize that some people have different last names, right? I don't care about that, right? But there's another red flag where Mother and daughter, two different last names, two different addresses. Like they're nowhere near. And you're like, okay, but you're running them. All the other stuff checks out. Everything checks out. Income's coming in. All right, cool. They're fine. They're fine. But say like exactly what you said. Like we wish we would have met the other 6 family members that was actually coming to stay with them as well. Not even lying to you. Not even lying to you.
I can't.
The other 6 family members that were coming, like, it's all y'all. Okay. Yeah. And mind you, we were living in the property at the time, so they're above us.
Oh
And
no.
it was, yep.
No.
Oh yeah, that was
They're brave.
literally verbatim. That was wifey's response, and then they were no longer with us.
Yeah. I mean,
It was so yeah, and we were like yeah, and we worked with them in the beginning, right? Because it was like the first couple of days it was like, all right, you're not doing anything, y'all not acting crazy, okay. Maybe as long as y'all keep the money coming in, like we're good. And then like right after that first week, like that's when like every lifestyle kicks in, and then like the actual lifestyle of how they ran their lives kicked in. And yeah, that was they stayed with us for like 4 months or so, and then we had to get them out.
yep.
And it was
You don't respect the rules. It's hey.
yeah, and it was just the fact that like they could have been really honest, like, yo, we just wanted to help our family. I'm not knocking that, but it's just the fact that like that doesn't work. And then you have a bunch of people that you don't know or that's not on the lease that's coming into the property. So
Cool.
that's one funny story, but it is what it is. But we still out here on top. And I actually got some more offers that I got to submit on a couple other ones as we speak. But
Awesome.
all is well. All is well. Kendra, as always, thank you for definitely coming on the show. Listen, we're always doing things. We're starting to get a little bit more active just with the podcast, webinars, seminars, everything like that. Random IG lives. So I'm pretty sure we'll be knocking on your digital door sooner rather than later to invite you back on because one, personally, I always love to see Black women that are excelling at this rate, simply because y'all will eventually help the Black men because we one step behind, but that's okay. We catching up, and
y'all got it. Y'all got it.
we Gucci. But just doing it together and just having your spin on it. Where, like I was telling, and Jonathan, like I was saying. Most of like the podcast episodes, you'll find like from 0 to 150 doors in 3 years, and you subconsciously plant that you have to have these many doors to be financially free or have it change your financial trajectory. And
we only had 8, so
yeah, and you've been able to change everything, and you're about to continue to expand down in San Antonio. So.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I look forward to connecting with you guys. And like I said, if anyone has listened to this and has any questions, I look forward to hearing from y'all as well.
Oh, love. Jonathan, you good?
I'm good. Just want to say congratulations on the baby. Keep pushing.
Congratulations.
Generational wealth. Let's make it. Let's keep going. Let's keep pushing.
I don't have any yet. Okay. We're gonna have a conversation with wifey.
Take your time.
I know everybody. It's so confused. Like, take your time, and then like you're never ready. I was like, so which one is it?
Yeah, you're never gonna be ready. Just do it when you feel comfortable.
I think there's a way to be ready to not be ready. Right? Like you can not be ready to become an entrepreneur, but you like are like, well, whatever happens, like we're ready. And then there's times where you're just like,
same as your first property. You weren't ready, but you made it happen, right?
But you made it. You're right.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think that's a big difference because I think most people are like, well, you're not gonna be ready anyway, and they're like, all right, so we just do this, right? Like, no. So, but all good. That's a separate conversation. But Kendra's got.
I'm like. No, speaking of that, let me go make my boss lunch because it's her lunchtime. So thank you guys. And I will talk to y'all soon.
Oh, be safe. Jonathan, we will talk.
Bye.
All righty.